Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? Ooh, it do be 90 degrees out here. Today's book is the second in a series, so really I'm going to be covering the first two. I read the first book in December back when I had the podcast, and I didn't review it here on the channel. So this is just an introduction to what it is. There are 10 books out in this series so far, but that's not the same as it being like a big epic fantasy series or urban fantasy series because these are short books. The two that I've read, they kind of remind me of Animorphs books in terms of their length, like just to have a comparison to something that I've been rereading recently. The audiobooks for these are like 3 hours a piece. They're not substantial in terms of word count, but they're good, they're light, they're enjoyable, they've got a very readable voice to them, and the setting is familiar so that you don't have to wrap your head too much around like the tech or the world building or anything. Like it's really the characters and the plots that carry these. The series is called Dumb Luck and Dead Heroes by Skylar Ramirez. I was first put onto this by our friend in the esoteric online religious extremist community, Bossy. Shout out to her. I'll give her a tag when I post this. I think Skylar Ramirez is like a guy that she knows in her neighborhood or something because I see her sharing this on Facebook all the time. And that's what got me to check out the first one. And I really, really enjoyed that first one. The first ship in the book, the first book in the series is called The Worst Ship in the Fleet. And then the second one is The Worst Spies in the Sector, and that's kind of the naming convention for the remainder, like the worst X in the Y, and you get it. We're out in space for this one. There is a whole range of human republics across different solar systems and stuff. The exact number has not been declared yet. Our main character is a guy named Brad Mendoza, who is an alcoholic idiot, recently divorced after he found his wife cheating on him. But also he did a whoopsie daisy. He did a bad thing. He accidentally killed like 500 civilians as the commanding officer of a space naval vessel. If that premise sounds familiar, it's because it's kind of similar to Grimm's War by Jeffrey Haskell. But these two series, like other than sharing the fact that they're out in space and there aren't really aliens and the main character whoopsied griefed a whole bunch of civilians. Like other than that, these are completely different in tone, in direction, in style, in all of that. Like Jeffrey Haskell and Skylar Ramirez are two different writers playing in the same kind of sandbox. So if it sounds familiar, it's because conceptually, like the seed planted is similar, but these two guys are doing very different things with these books. So Brad Mendoza is getting drummed around into crap assignments in the super space navy of the future. He's divorced. His wife was cuckolding him on the side, and now he's in charge of this crap ship called the Persephone. But it just so happens that one of his subordinates is like pretty much the hottest woman in space like ever. And so he's like, okay, well, this is cool. Well, then he finds out that there's more to this crap assignment than meets the eye, and because of the aforementioned space hottie named Jessica, he decides to kind of get his crap together and try to competently lead the ship despite the very unique obstacles on it, including some very well-connected quote-unquote subordinates who throw their weight around because of who they're related to. So Brad's got to navigate some political and interpersonal minefields in order to succeed at saving this bad ship from this bad assignment, and he has to admit it's bad captain, which is him. The conclusion of that first book leads into the second book where Brad and Jessica are now on a very unique assignment, and they have to play the role of spies. I'm not going to say anything beyond that because, like I said at the beginning, these books are very short. They remind me of kind of like Star Trek episodes where like you get in, you have an adventure, you've got a couple of hiccups and plots along the way. Like it's more of one of like the action heavy episodes of Star Trek where you're you're in something that's part of like a connected series of episodes. It's not just like, okay, static. We're on a ship. We're flying around. We found a weird planet that does something weird, and we figure out what the weird thing is, and we learn something weird, and now we're back off doing weird space stuff. It's like, no, these are all like more like a streaming show where each new adventure is kind of determined by where the last one left you. Like there's more of a through line to it so far, and like looking ahead at future titles and so on and so forth, like I get that this is going to be a continuing thing. I think there's definitely a niche that Ramirez has carved out for himself in the sci-fi market here, because there are so many like big sweeping epics in sci-fi and in space opera and whatnot. There's room for a market of people that want something that's not so massive. Like, get in, give me something with good tone, good voice, give me characters that I can root for, and don't make me read it for 8 hours to get through it. And, fortunately, he's churning these out at such a pace that, newcomers can come in, they can read one. It's like, oh, there's 10 books in this series. Oh, but they're short. It's not like I've got to commit the next 6 months to reading these if I want to catch up on all of them. Like, there are plenty of adult readers that would only want to commit that kind of attention span to it. And I think he's really got something here solid concept-wise that's working. Brad definitely has his flaws. He definitely puts his foot in his mouth. And, so far as I've been able to gather from, any second and third hand experience, like he writes an alcoholic well. This guy with very hard to fight self-destructive tendencies is nevertheless like trying to pull himself out of some of them, because he's found something that, despite this bad hand that's been dealt to him in life, like he's found something that he wants to live for. He's kind of found his muse again in Jessica, and like she's really great too. Like she's not just the trope of the freaking what's it called, the manic pixie dream girl. Like, yeah, she's beautiful and she knows it. She's also got some tragedies in her history, and she's eager to prove herself as an intelligent officer and a contributing crew member in this Promethean Navy. But she's got to kind of play off of Brad's weaknesses and like fill the gaps in what he brings to the story, and she does that very well. She's well written, very likable. There are just unimaginable levels of space thirst coming from Brad. Like every time he writes this character, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, she's wearing a skin-tight space uniform, and she's got curves, and she is very hot, and every man is hot for her. And la 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 la, like the Looney Tunes cartoon eyes and the Aruga and all that. Like, calm down, Brad. Calm down. But these are good, fun books. Your content-wise, like the language is tame. There is a sensual, not really, like we'll say an explicit situation discovered in the first book that is like pretty tragic and heavy, and like Brad treats it as weightily as it deserves. But it just shows that, like, while there is a lot of levity and heart and humor in this series, there is also some gravity to it as well. Haha, see, that's a space joke, but it's also like it's real. Like it deals with serious things. Like there are spies and there are killers and stuff. It just doesn't wash over the hard parts of the setup when it gets to them. I compare it to Star Trek. I might also compare it a little bit to Firefly, but don't get the wrong idea from that, because it feels like every space opera writer who's tried to write Firefly since Firefly went off the air is basically just writing Firefly with the serial numbers scrubbed off. Like, oh, here's our scrappy ship with a mismatched crew, and our captain, Ralcom Menolds, and his diverse first mate, and his mouthy mercenary, and his plucky pilot, and his golly gee whiz shucks cute as a button mechanic. It's like, okay, frick, we get what you're doing, buddy. Like, this reminds me of Firefly only in the sense that it's space opera that is fun as much as it can be, and heavy when it needs to be, and just as smart as it ought to be when it requires it. So it hits a lot of right notes. It hits the right chords, I guess we'll say, and it's got really good balance to it all. So for that reason, I will highly recommend, so far, 2 books in, the Dumb Luck and Dead Heroes series by Skylar Ramirez. Good stuff. Keep them coming. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.